So today, we're going to dive into the really profound teachings of the 18th century poet saint Sant Gareendas. We'll be getting into his powerful work, Upadesh Kaang, which means the chapter on teachings, to see what it can tell us about a timeless path to spiritual transformation.
Right out of the gate, the text hits you with this incredibly blunt statement. I mean, it's not a suggestion, it's more like a diagnosis. Sant Gareendas is basically saying that the core human problem is a life without any spiritual direction. Without that devotion, he says, a person isn't just lost, they're essentially inert, unfeeling, unconscious, just like a stone.
And that, of course, is the million-dollar question, right? If we start out as this unshaped stone, what's the process that turns us into something more? This question really sets the stage for the whole journey we're about to explore, mapping out a path from ignorance to true enlightenment.
Okay, so why is guidance so critical? These teachings don't frame it as just a helpful option. Nope, it's an absolute necessity for the soul. And as we're about to see, the stakes are unbelievably high. This slide really lays out a stark choice, and it uses these classic figures to make the point. On one side, without a guru, you've got the path of Ravan. Yeah, he was powerful and smart, but in the end, his own ego destroyed him. On the other side, with a guru, you have the devotee Prahlad, who found a higher spiritual place through just unwavering faith. So the text is really framing it as a choice between two destinies, one of total chaos and one of real clarity. So if guidance is the answer, the text is super specific about where that guidance has to come from. It's not just any old information or any teacher. It's the Sat Guru, the true teacher.
The Sat Guru is presented as the essential catalyst for any change. Think of them as the only one holding the key to a locked door. They have the Upadesh, that core teaching that can fundamentally change a person's entire state of being. The text argues that without this very specific key, that door to enlightenment, it's staying shut, period.
This verse gives us such a powerful image for what the ideal teacher-student relationship looks like. It's not about just sitting and listening to lectures. It's about a complete and total fusion. The idea is that the disciple's consciousness should soak up the guru's wisdom so completely that you can't tell them apart anymore, just like salt dissolving in water.
So how does this merger, this transformation actually happen? Well, this is where the teachings get incredibly vivid. The text uses this really powerful and almost visceral metaphor to explain the whole process of spiritual purification.
This central analogy is really the heart of this entire chapter. The teacher is a master blacksmith, and the disciple? Well, they arrive like a piece of raw, impure iron. Full of potential for sure, but also full of flaws and impurities. Let's break this whole thing down, because it shows that spiritual growth isn't gentle or passive. Not at all. It's active and it's intense. First, you've got the raw iron. That's the student, and it's heated in a furnace to make it soft and workable. Then, the guru uses the hammer of knowledge to literally strike away all the impurities. And get this, it all happens on the anvil of Anhad, which represents this kind of unstruck divine sound, a fundamental, universal truth that's under everything. The end result is that the crude, flawed iron gets transformed into something pure, valuable, and even sweet.
Okay, so after all that, after this really intense and difficult forging process, what's the final outcome? What does the transformed soul actually get to experience?
The reward for this tough journey is a state of absolute freedom. The text describes a full, divine light just lighting you up from the inside. The soul, which was once totally lost, now finds its one true path. The mind is no longer a prisoner of all these worldly worries. Instead, it's free to just roam the universe. And maybe most importantly, that painful cycle of birth and death is finally broken.
All right, let's bring all these ideas together and really focus on the core message from Sant Gareendas' verses.
So here's the crucial point. Self-help has its limits. According to this text, true spiritual awakening is not a solo project. It requires the active, shaping, and sometimes intense force of a Satguru to turn that untapped potential into real, actualized enlightenment. It's a collaboration, not some solitary climb up a mountain.
And this final verse just brings us right back to where we started. The Upadesh, the teaching from the Guru, isn't just one skill you learn among many others. No, it's the root art. It's the foundational craft that you build a meaningful life on. Everything else grows from that.
Sant Gareendas' answer was pretty clear. You need to seek out a true teacher. But his 300-year-old wisdom leaves us with a really profound question for our own time. I mean, in a world that is just overflowing with data, with self-proclaimed gurus, and endless online content, How do we distinguish the noise from the signal, the information from the true transformative update?